Welcome everybody to what is actually episode 20 of the Cover 2. We've made it 2 decades of shows as the Cover 2. It's kind of a big milestone.
Yeah, I think that the big ones are 20, 25, 50, 100, 75.
We'll keep going. But I'm Patrick Neal with Grace and Man as always. And while there isn't too much news this week, we are going to go back a little bit to our roots, go back and talk a little bit of college football. So today we're going to be talking about basically if we were the commissioner of college football, what would we need to change? We're going to talk about playoff, we're talking about transfer portal and the NIL mostly today. And then maybe a little bit about Juwan Howard getting in a little bit of trouble, and NBA All-Star Weekend was also this weekend too. So maybe just talk about that towards the end. So.
Juwan Howard's UFC debut and a lousy All-Star Weekend.
Yeah.
But
I thought the game was actually very good.
The game was good, but the rest of it was just terrible.
Yeah. Actually, Rising Stars was good too. It was really just the dunk contest.
The dunk contest
was awful.
Was terrible.
Plus DJ Khaled just screaming lyrics in his microphone after every artist that came up.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up because I thought that was the only person that noticed, because they'd have the actual person, and Khaled would sneak up behind him and start going, oh,
yeah,
and start screaming.
He really felt like he had to do something.
He was having the best time of his life.
He didn't want to just stand there and do nothing, because normally he says 2 words in the beginning of the song.
He has the mic in one hand and he always does the 2-finger yo. For the people on YouTube that are watching, they just saw that little.
Wow. Yeah, Grayson is the next DJ.
Include that on the intro now.
He's gonna leave college and become a music producer, I guess.
That is not happening. Let's start with the CFP.
Okay. So I think right now we're at a very important time in college football. In all honesty, we're at in all honesty, I'm gonna say it, pretty dangerous time.
Dangerous. Okay.
We're in a. This past season has been unlike any other. It's the first season of NIL. A bunch of people are talking about we need to fix the college football playoff. If we start with the playoff, there's a lot of talk about whether it needs to be expanded or not. It came out just the other day that they are staying with 4 teams through the 2025 season until the end of some contract.
I think the contract is through 2026. But the thing is, there's so many different variables, like conference rights, television rights. ESPN wants their stake in it. All the conferences, based on what I read, just to kind of prep for this, everybody wants their slice of the pie, and they also want to protect their conference.
Yes.
And just it's so complicated. But we'll get into it with the lack of leadership that college football has.
I think we need to establish that the first thing that college football needs to do right now is establish a commissioner. So in this case, it's us, and we're talking about how we would potentially I think fix stuff. But college football, there is so much division, so much there's a lack of communication. There's no what's the word? There's no why can I not think of the word?
Clarity?
Yeah, clarity, and also just why am I blanking on the word? There's nothing's the same throughout all the conferences. Everybody's playing different.
Oh, parity.
Yeah.
There it is.
Oh well, is parity the same? This is killing me.
Parity.
This is killing me. But the word's gonna come to me in a second. But there's consistency. Thank you, Zach. I don't know.
I hope
why
that airs, because that is Zach's first drop into the show.
First word
clapping that one up. Welcome.
We're getting crazy here, but I cannot believe I couldn't think of that word. It just completely left my mind. But yes, there is no consistency in college football. Different conferences have different rules, different divisions. The Big 12 doesn't have divisions. The Big 10 does. They're playing different amounts of conference games. Some are playing 8, some are playing 9. We need a commissioner to establish normalcy within the entirety of NCAA college football.
That's the problem. There's never been a big issue with so many different divisions, but once you get to the college football playoff, where there's it goes from total chaos to it has to be one specific way to get in, and it's judged by a group of different people. So you have a Big 12 guy that experiences something different, an ACC guy that experiences something different, an SEC guy that experiences something totally different for sure. So everyone comes in with this different perspective, which is a good thing. But at the same time, how is that SEC guy going to view Oregon that went 12-1 and loses to Utah? How does the ACC guy want to kind of you get what I'm saying? There's so much different, like you said, the lack of consistency. Yeah. I don't know if it starts with that, but do you want to talk about expansion? The right number of teams, personally, to me, 12 seems ridiculous. I don't think we're going to. I think people are worried about, we want more games. Don't want Bama to win all the time. I think that'll eventually reach the same conclusion, just because the 12 Pittsburgh this year is not going to beat number 1 Alabama.
I think you're right with that, but I feel like the most important thing we need to do right now is make the games important.
Okay.
Like, especially right now, a lot of the bowl games, it seems like there's just a lack of importance for those players and coaches as well, with them leaving. But talk about that later. I don't know why it's happened, but with NIL now, with people trying to protect themselves for the NFL draft, college football seems like it's almost just becoming a prep for the NFL draft.
It's more of a formality.
Yeah. Meanwhile, there's still a ton of people that care about the sport deeply, care about the tradition, and when we're having Ohio State fans turn back tickets for a Rose Bowl game, like that's absurd. I don't know what we need to do to change that.
I think maybe if you expand the playoff, you need to find that sweet spot, and I think you need to make those New Year's I think we talked about this before, but if we're going to keep it at 4, I think we need to make the college football playoff its own thing instead of making it a part of the New Year's Six. Mm-hmm. Because, for example, this year was the Orange Bowl and the Cotton Bowl. The rest of them kind of seemed like a formality and not as important. If you separate the two, say the New Year's Six is still super important, you can get a couple teams added into that mix, and at the same time, you can still have it still be played in Dallas and Miami if you want to have those NFL those cities and those, because I know it's all contracts and TV rights and stuff like that. You could add extra games in that scenario by making the CFP its own thing. But when you have, for example, it was last year in 2020 when it was Kyle Trask and his practice squad versus Oklahoma and they got killed, it ruined that game in a sense.
Yeah. I think there's a few ways that college football can go. Now, there's some people that are saying just go back to BCS, go back to 2 teams.
That would be something.
because bowl games mattered back then.
They did.
When we had the BCS, and it seems like ever since we started the college football playoff, it doesn't matter anymore. If you aren't getting one of those 4 spots, it does not matter. So you could potentially go back to the BCS era. I don't know if they want to do that anymore because you almost, I don't know. I feel like that's probably not the option that. If there is expansion or a change to the playoff format, I feel like that's probably not it. I think if you went to 12 teams, you get the top 6. Top 6 are auto bids. They're the top 6 conference champions. You get the first 4 seeds get buys. So there is some sort of there's some sort of reward for being a top 4 team.
Okay.
Still. So you get a first round bye. And if you play the first round of games at home stadiums, you also get an opportunity for, it still matters to be a top 6, top 8 seed because you're getting home field advantage for a game. And then if you made maybe the second round, all the bowl games, all the New Year's Six games, that potentially that potentially returns a little bit of importance to it. I don't know.
Because I don't see people opting out. You know what? I like the way you go with that 12 spot. You might change my mind this episode. You might. You just might. But having those bowl games, because no player in their right mind is going to opt out of a playoff game. Because then you change it. You change the significance to it.
I want to talk about that for a second. I feel like the way it's going now. I remember listening to a podcast. Kirk Herbstreit was talking on it.
Yeah.
And basically, he's saying, if you're opting out of the bowl game. Seriously, why don't you just opt out of the entire season? Like as fans, we'd hate that to happen, but I feel like that's the direction. He said it feels like that's the direction it's going, and I kind of agree with him because, eventually, if you're pretty much a secured top 10, top 15 first round pick,
why play
going into the season? Someone like Jamar Chase who sat out an entire season because of COVID, He sat out the entire season and was still a top pick. So eventually, I feel like that's where it's going to lead to players just opting out of entire seasons. So where was I going with this? It's just I don't know. I feel like the way players are going now with opt-outs. Meanwhile, like there's a lot of fear that players are going to get injured in bowl games.
Yeah.
So which I actually don't think is completely the case. Like it's just singled out. It's emphasized when someone like Matt Corral gets injured.
Well, if you have a patch of it's like kind of like the bad apple in the batch gets instead of if there's 12 of them and then one of them is sour, then like it just that bad part gets emphasized. So, like the Jalen Smith example.
Yeah.
I mean, you could go through hundreds of bowl games and
not get injured.
Pick out the top prospects that played, and they're fine. Like Andrew Booth this year, for example, in the Cheez-It Bowl of all things.
Yeah.
Like that's not even. I mean, we want those games to still be important, but if someone opts out of the Cheez-It Bowl, it's not going to make national headlines.
Yeah.
So him staying, he played, had a decent game. I actually thought he got hurt maybe.
I just don't understand. If I'm personally a player, I'm personally playing as many games in college football as I can, because you just don't get that sense of brotherhood, that sense of tradition anywhere else, I don't think.
Yeah, and I honestly thought the NIL would kind of stop that in a way.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to earn money, then the more games you play, the more attention you receive.
Exactly.
But that doesn't seem to be the case, because I guess the top picks are going to earn their money anyways.
But
to go back to what you said with Kirk Herbstreit, if they opted out of the entire season, wouldn't that be more beneficial? Because then, the whole roster bowl thing, that doesn't shake up, because they usually opt out and they have 2 weeks to decide how the heck do we play with the top tight end in the nation. They'll have a whole season instead to kind of build that up, and then it's not as much of a letdown, because then we have the whole season to kind of figure out new players, new storylines, and see potentially the backup is pretty darn good too.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think also if we're trying to bring back some competitiveness to bowl games, especially in New Year's Six, bring back some importance to the offseason, we have to, and this is kind of transferring a little bit to another point, we need to establish certain timelines, certain periods where we can have the transfer portal open.
Absolutely.
It cannot be something that is basically 365 days a year, because that requires, now coaches also need to basically be put on a timeline of when they can change. And with early recruiting changing to December 15th, it now requires coaches to be paying attention to recruiting. Meanwhile, they're still in the end of their season looking towards the playoffs and bowl games. So we need to establish a specific time period when it is okay to transfer, because that means coaches don't have to worry about keeping every single one of their players on the roster the entirety of the year, because that's just absurd.
I really, this is to me more important than the college football playoff, because it is the players transferring, and there's so much chaos at the end of the year with, for example, Lincoln Riley just up and leaving, or Les Miles up and leaving when Notre Dame had a chance at the playoff.
I know.
That is a
crazy.
Significant issue.
Yeah.
That sets a really bad precedent for coaches to just abandon their teams whenever they feel like and just kind of go, what the heck? This is a better opportunity for me, instead of waiting until after the season. I mean, you have Kevin O'Connell, for example, who you can be hired in principal, but coach out the rest of the year. And then after the Super Bowl, he went as the new head coach of the Vikings. Personally, I would love to see the NCAA, in college football more specifically, adopt a more NFL-like schedule to where there's a free agency period, because it is basically, at this point, free agency. And there's no contracts and stuff like that. But have a point, start at probably like at the end of the season, after maybe February to spring training or spring football or something.
Yeah.
Spring training sounds like baseball. Like February to spring football, to where players have that 2-month, 3-month period to be able to transfer, find new teams, because that's plenty of time. It takes away from the team distraction. It doesn't make it as ridiculous and as chaotic. They need to find a way to kind of condense it all. And then you can create, the NCAA will really benefit off of having more content in the offseason, because college football, more than most, doesn't have much to talk about and doesn't really have a voice.
This is true.
In the spring and in the winter.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. And I think we also I kind of mentioned this, but we need to put just as much responsibility on the coaches sticking with their teams and staying with their teams throughout the entirety of the season, as much as we do need the players. Coaches maybe even more so, because
They're the figurehead.
they're the figurehead. They're the ones that are supposed to be leading these men into battle, so to speak.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
And they're the ones, like, there's plenty of money now in NIL for players, but the coaches are the ones still making millions of dollars.
Right.
So we need just as much responsibility, I think, on those coaches to set the precedent and really just when it boils down, bring back the tradition and you know the responsibility that you have as a college athlete, as a college coach.
The monetization of college football and just like the business side of it, the more lucrative, like the more things that players can do and coaches can earn from college football, the more it is kind of taken away from the heart and the core of what college football is. Because for a lot of people that I talk to, and I don't know if this is what a lot of my friends, a lot of my family, they love college football because it has that just classic feel to it.
Yes.
The NFL feels more like a business. They're there for the money, they're there for this, they're for that. That's not for everybody. That's not everybody's reason. But college football, they have whole families coming together for a USF game, potentially. Like, no, you don't have that for the NFL because there's so many different teams in college football, so many bloodlines that are going to specific schools. So it just, to not quote the SEC, it means more to them, not to kind of lay the hammer on that. Like, you have people like, not just Clemson or Ohio State or Oklahoma, you have these smaller schools like, heck, even Kansas football has this like cult following. Every school, you can find thousands of people that love it so much just because of what it is. And it's starting to change because of this NIL stuff, because of this, the way players are earning money and all that. Not saying that players shouldn't be compensated for what they're doing, but there's a certain system that we need to kind of adapt.
Like just look at the rivalries, the comparison between rivalries in the NFL and in college football. Yeah, you have rivalries, you know, Eagles, Cowboys, Ravens, Steelers, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then you go over to college football and you have, you know, the game. You have Michigan, Ohio State. You have Alabama, Auburn. I think it's pretty fair to say rivalries like that supersede any NFL rivalry.
There is a whole weekend dedicated to just that.
Yeah, it is. Rivalry weekend is like, if I think it is the biggest tradition in college football, and is the one thing, if anything, that sets college football apart.
Yeah, and I mean, you have certain like coaches like Harbaugh. The criteria was, can you beat your rival? And he did that this year, and it was such a big deal for Michigan and that catalyst for their playoff season. They obviously get the national, or like Georgia and Alabama have kind of made their own rivalry through the playoff. Clemson and Alabama have made this kind of championship rivalry because of the way Dabo and them came up. It just the way I got chills. It is so cool to talk about, but I mean, like you're right. There's like Steelers, Ravens, Bears, Packers. Those don't even compare to like even Clemson, South Carolina. It's a whole state just butting heads for a couple weeks. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and you're looking forward to that the entirety of the season. Your season can be absolutely garbage, can be an absolute train wreck.
But if they take them down,
yeah, rivalry weekend comes and you beat your rival, and it's the season's suddenly a success.
Like you could go 4-8, but all's forgiven if you beat your top 10 rival.
Yeah, plus the upsets as well. Like at the NFL, any team can win any single week. Like the Lions proved that. But
boom.
when a low-level college team upsets, you know, a top 10 opponent, that's just a different type of upset. You know, you have people storming the field, and you know, college kids are absolutely crazy. And it's just unlike anything else.
Yeah, I completely agree. Which is why adding a commissioner and adding leadership to the top to keep this going. And I agree when you said in the beginning that we're at a really weird point. I don't necessarily believe it's dangerous because college football will survive because it makes so much money every year. But you're going to start to lose your casual fans if all of a sudden, and just like your traditional people, because there's a lot of old-fashioned fans that have been, I mean, there's a couple of guys that I've talked to. There was an Iowa sports fan that's been a fan for like almost like all of his entire life. And if it starts to change right before his eyes, where is his investment being rewarded is what I think that is what's more important. How are the fans being rewarded for these investments if the way college football is changing isn't right for the sport?
Yeah. If we want to transition a little bit, the NIL.
I could.
Yeah. So I'm not quite sure what we need to do with the NIL, and
It's still guinea pig at the moment.
it's very in its infancy. There's still a lot to be figured out about the NIL, but right now, I'm not quite sure. I feel like at some point there needs to be some sort of restrictions, but I don't know what those restrictions are.
I haven't really, and I think the only one that's really spoken out about this that I haven't really seen any opposition to it besides like Dabo.
Yeah.
But the way he was making the point is it kind of what we've been saying. It kind of takes away from the spirit of college football. It's not about going to schools for like the game or the education. It's how can I make the most money, which is never what college football has been about. But we haven't seen anything, and it's only because it's so. I don't want to be cynical. We haven't seen anything controversial with NIL exactly yet. So I don't know if I have a solution currently to present.
Yeah. But I mean, there's still a lot of good that can come out of NIL.
Right.
There's like, walk-ons getting scholarships and getting an opportunity to make money when
That Kansas guy that had the Applebee's commercial.
Exactly. There's there's players that were donating all their NIL money to charity, which is an awesome thing to see.
Absolutely.
But then you see somebody like I don't know exactly his motivations, but Quinn Ewers, he decided to come to Ohio State early when he learned that Texas high school football would not let him profit off his name, image, and likeness in high school. So he was able to come to Ohio State. I'm not sure how much money he made. I'm not sure completely of his motivations, but it was kind of weird to see when he transferred to Texas after playing like 2 snaps all season.
Yeah, it was a little odd. So if there's like so many moving parts, but if that becomes a that becomes like the norm, that's a problem. Especially skipping out your senior year of high school. And again, we don't know if he needed if they needed the money, if the motivations for that. So I can't say for sure, and I can't necessarily criticize it because it's the only one that I've seen.
He is the first. He was really the first person to kind of do that. He was kind of. I don't know if a trailblazer is the right word, but I guess that's kind of what he did. But it also transitions back to the NIL connects so much with, in order to kind of make money in the NIL, you have to play. And if you're sitting behind a quarterback or somebody in your position group that is, maybe a year older, you're wanting to play right now. It ties completely back to the transfer portal. And,
right.
And everybody is so impatient now. If they are sitting behind someone, if maybe they thought they were going to play their freshman season and they aren't doing that, they're just going to enter the transfer portal immediately.
Yeah, I think we've created a culture in college football. I mean, like 6 years ago, it was unheard of for people to transfer. Like the Joe Burrow transfer was seen as kind of like even at the time of Joe Burrow, which was like 3 years ago, that was seen as abnormal. Mm-hmm. So we've created a culture in college football where if you're not getting the playing time you want and you just kind of want to, and it's weird with the recruiting, you invest so much time into figuring out which school is best for you, and then in a span of 3 to 6 months, you decide you want to leave and start over. Yeah. It's insane how that's, like with a lot of freshmen too, who are like coming as 5-stars. I mean, we've seen it with Clemson. A lot of these players are starting to transfer. Like not just Clemson, but all over the country. And I just wanted to include Clemson as an example for like our Clemson audience that, we're right here.
Yeah, but it's also like coaches are also having to re-recruit their players like once they're at their universities.
Like trying to keep them there.
Yeah, because the transfer portal it's like Waffle House, open 24/7 basically.
It's not frowned upon. It used to be frowned upon, just kind of transfer, it's so. And this is why there's no easy fix, obviously, but they need to for sure hire a commissioner.
Yeah.
They need to take certain steps to ensure that the heart of college football stays together. Mm-hmm. It's so important it's pretty much the bridge between the high school, which is considered amateur now, and then you have the bridge to the NFL. How do we keep that bridge? How do we keep that structure going?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So just to kind of recap, like you said, what are we saying we need to do? We need a commissioner. What are we saying for playoff? Like,
I think we need the expansion.
I think we need an expansion, and most importantly, when we're doing an expansion, we need those first round games. Depending on how many teams we expand to, it needs to be either home playoff games, or I think those first round games, we need to have enough first round games to where it covers all of the New Year's Six bowls.
Bowl games matter, and try to prevent as many opt-outs as possible.
I believe we talked about this before as well, but what if like you had the bowl games as an extension of the regular season? Maybe that creates a little bit more importance as well, because you basically go bowl games and then everybody is reseeded. It's a top 10 out of conference probably game that's added to your schedule, and then you have the playoff after that. I think that could be maybe a solid idea. But do those two things. We need specific deadlines kind of for transfers and for coaches as well. Probably need to move the early recruiting date back to where it was.
Yeah.
Which is the regular recruiting period is February 2nd, or regular recruiting day is February 2nd. I think we need to move it back there, because that means coaches aren't having to, if they're going to take a new job, that means they aren't having to worry about recruiting while also coaching for a playoff,
right?
Coaching for a bowl game, and anything else.
Give college football a voice in that early spring season by making free agency February to April in a sense, right? As spring football and spring training. I said it again, spring training. It's like
You're in a baseball mood.
I've been looking too much at the lockout stuff, but yeah, that's pretty much it for college. Anything else before we wrap up? Do we want to actually touch on the whole Michigan fight, or do we want to save that?
Juwan Howard, man, he was crazy. I'm actually surprised. It's only 5 games?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was for the rest of the regular season, and they're a bubble team, so it impacts them more than
That's true, but I'm kind of surprised it's only 5 games when, like, I mean, Woody Hayes back in the day punched a player,
and that was unacceptable at the time.
and he got fired. I mean, it's a player versus an assistant coach, so I guess you're punching a grown man and not a kid. But
still, though, for a coach, like, there's a level of professionalism that they need to maintain. That's bad.
Because I want to say the reason it all happened is because basically Michigan had lost. They were going to shake hands. Juwan Howard was not going to shake Greg Gard's hand. And Greg Gard kind of grabbed his hand to shake it. And then he was like,
Howard,
"Don't touch me."
Yeah, Gard should have definitely not have put his hands on Howard without like. And it's a whole. But Howard also shouldn't have thrown a punch. It's always the second guy. All I gotta say about it is it was pretty funny.
It was kind of funny to watch, looking at basically a different person every single time.
Yeah,
through the video. There's a lot of characters. Not quite Malice in the Palace though.
No, not quite that. That would have been something. Holy cow.
Yeah.
But all right, that's it for me, man. What do you?
Do you want to rant about the dunk contest real quick?
All right,
I know you texted me.
I'm gonna give you my 20-second rundown. They need to. I understand that we've seen everything from the dunk contest. We've seen it all this stuff, but good God, was it awful? Like the first thing they need to do is they need to stop giving these players so many attempts and just it ended up dragging out the contest. I mean, I think Jalen Green had 10 attempts for the same dunk, and eventually, even if he made it, it kind of loses the excitement of it, because I was like, oh yeah, you finally did it. Ran over. I wanted to kind of keep it.
Well, is like no dunk better than like a dunk at a certain point?
I guess. They gotta fix it. I just remember 2016 and 2020 with Aaron Gordon and just being in awe of what they could do.
The issue is so much has been done now.
Yeah, it's tough to be creative.
Creativity is because now you're having to full out plan everything, and go really, really extravagant with it. It's kind of like, kind of to compare it, it's kind of like the Marvel universe. You know, there's only so many villains bigger than Thanos that you can fight. Like eventually the Marvel universe might have an issue. It kind of has an issue right now, because what's bigger than the multiverse? What's bigger than like multiple universes?
I don't know. Multiple universes.
Yeah, basically. But
even Zach does not know.
But it's the dunk contest is kind of like that, where eventually, how much bigger can you get?
Yeah.
There's only so much you can do to dunk a ball.
The dunk contest needs multiple Spider-Men to come in and inject life into the slam dunk contest cinematic universe.
Maybe eventually I don't know. Would you give them trampolines? I don't know.
That would be fun.
Because
kind of make it into a little jump park.
Yeah, that gives some sort of new ideas that can be
Lower the rim
done.
and just let like little kids just start dunking and stuff.
Oh.
Or get the
there's
Harlem
an idea.
Globetrotters out.
But I felt like everything else was
Everything else was fine.
I thought the Rising Stars, the new tournament, was awesome.
The skills contest was pretty fun.
It was pretty fun as well.
Like,
the teams, the
teams
how they
weird.
created the teams was kind of random, but
The Antetokounmpos, the random rookies, and then the Cavs.
yeah, it
like,
was fun. I enjoyed the skills contest as well because they redid a whole bunch of it.
Yeah, I heard knockout, and I still think the NBA should do a 1v1 tourney, and the winner gets like a large sum of money.
1v1 tourney would be awesome to see. Kind of like how I think the Pro Bowl, they should do like one-on-ones, receiver versus DBs.
I could do a whole episode of just ranting about the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl stinks.
You hate just all-star stuff. For
I'm in such a
every
crummy
sport.
mood.
Yeah, today was not the most uplifting of episodes, I guess.
I think we had a couple good laughs though.
Yeah.
We'll keep them into it.
Well, anything else, Grayson?
That'll do it. That'll do it for me.
Yeah. So as always, thanks Zach in the back, producing the show as always. Thank you all for tuning in, whether it's Spotify, YouTube. We aren't on any other platforms, are we?
We will add some soon. I am working in that process.
Well, wherever you're tuning in, we thank you for watching, listening, all of that. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe to Tigervision. Comment anything you want to see next. Comment any questions you have for us, maybe. Maybe we'll do a mailbag episode soon.
That'll be fun.
Spotify, rate and review us. And I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. Have a good one.